Don't forget, sign in, join our Discord. Ooh. Some announcements for this week. Remember, we're doing fire talks at the end of the semester. If any of y'all are interested in just coming up here talking for 5 to 10 minutes about anything you're really passionate in, especially if it's security related, hit up that QR code. Last I checked, we still have zero people that want to give a fire talk. Hopefully, me saying this every week will inspire some of y'all to give a fire talk. Really good resume filler, just to be able to say that you publicly spoke about a topic of interest, and just talk about that on your resume. Next announcement is CTFs. Not this weekend, but the next weekend, we're doing Sunshine CTF. That's going to be October 7th. More details on the next slide. On top of that, UTD CTF is always going on at our csgctf.com website. And last, starting tomorrow, is NSA Codebreaker Challenge. This is a unique CTF that goes on for multiple months, and they're really hard challenges typically. There's going to be a UTD's team, I assume, that you just sign up in. We typically get like top 3 in the nation for the UTD team. Once you sign up, it's just a good way to test yourself. If you complete all 9 challenges, there's a very good chance that the NSA will contact you and try to hire you. So if you're really smart and want to do all that, that's a way to get a job. On top of that, it's all on your own. So make sure if you do this, we can't help you. Everything's on your own. Google it, because there's no free answers. Unless it's on Google. Yes, Google is your best friend. No one else is. Next week, some more details. We're not going to have a club meeting, so no stream, we won't be here, no pizza. Instead, a lot of us will be at the Dallas Hackers Association, which is on our Discord. You can see the website. You can also see details by just looking up Dallas Hackers Association. Make sure y'all sign in. If you have not yet, grab pizza. The people grabbing pizza right now, particularly. There's a link. You got 2 minutes until I get rid of it.
Sign in.
Sign in, please. Thank you. This is helpful because it's how we get our pizza money, is proving that people show up. All right. Yep, so we'll be at Dallas Hackers Association. If you want to see a bunch of professionals give talks about things they've been working on in a Korean karaoke bar while they're half drunk, it's a good time. It's a good experience. Highly suggest you attend if you have the chance. On top of that, again, we're doing the Sunshine CTF. If any of y'all are interested in competing in a CTF and getting your feet wet, this is an opportunity for you to join us in our lab upstairs for a couple of hours on Saturday, and just try out some questions with people around you that are willing to help and work on the questions with you as well. All right. With that, let's get into the actual talk. Kerberoasting. All right, Kerberoasting. This, for some of y'all, might go over your head, and I'm gonna apologize for that. If you are lost, that's pretty normal, especially when you're a freshman or sophomore. It's just how it goes. I suggest to take that lost feeling, and instead of giving up, you take these slides that I post tonight, you research them, you look at the resources I provided, and you try it yourself, because it's a really cool hacking technique that you'll learn a lot about. Go ahead. Yeah, I'll be posting them on the Discord announcements after this. Yep. So, Kerberoasting. So there's some foundational knowledge that we have to understand before we get into exactly what this type of attack is. But at a general high level, Kerberoasting is an attack technique used by hackers to escalate their privileges and get to other computers on a network. So for instance, say someone on UTD has access to the computer that I'm sitting in front of right now. They can attempt to use a Kerberoast attack to get access to a web server that's running on UTD's network, or another server that's running on UTD's network. So understanding that at the basic, we need to go back and figure out what a network domain is. And a network domain is essentially a group of computers that has a single administrative function, or like a domain controller behind it that sets all the policies and privileges. So again, going back to UTD, every single time you log in onto UTD's network in their labs or through the VPN, you're accessing UTD's network domain that is ran by their own domain controller. A domain controller specifically is the server that is managing and automating how the network is ran. So you can think of it as setting when you have to, it's the server that says you have to reset your password every year. It's also the server that says you have to have this type of password. And it's also the server that helps figure out how you get access to like the Mars storage or whatever storage they have on their cloud network here whenever you log into any of the CS servers. So network domain, we feel pretty comfortable with the idea of what a network domain is. Sweet. Let's move on and talk about Active Directory. Active Directory is a specific type of network domain that is created and used for Windows systems. So pretty much every corporate directory or domain now is using Windows Active Directory. And they provide a lot of features that are pretty useful for network admins that need to control the domain. So you can consider, some example features that are pretty common are account management. Anytime you have a new employee, you need to create an account for them. And they need to be able to have access to specific computers, as well as domain policies. So some domain policies could be like specific passwords that or password policies, or just essentially anything that you think of that like you're not allowed to do when you get on UTD's network. That's a domain policy that the admin set to prevent you from accessing things. And another feature that is pretty common is Kerberoast. And this is one of the authentication methods that is used by Active Directory. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Actually, before that, we need to know one last thing, which is an SPN. Are any of y'all familiar with the idea of like a service? Okay, I'm just assuming you're not. So a service is a process, a program, something that's running on a computer all the time, and it has a function. So you can think of an example service as like a web server that's running on your computer that is running a website. And that's gonna have a service that is tied to it. And that service is gonna have an account tied to it that is managing all of its abilities and doing commands, or even you can have someone log in and run those commands manually. In Windows Active Directory, those services, so like a web server, an HTTP server, is going to have an account tied to it in the domain. So I can actually show this to y'all. If I go to my domain controller, which is on the other screen right now, there it is. So if I go to my domain controller, I log in real quick. Oh, that's the wrong server. 1 second. All right, here's my domain controller. I'm going to log in as the admin account. And I can go to the tools, go to the users. And I only gave it like a gig of RAM, so it's a little slow right now. Go to the users, I scroll down, there's user 1. And if I go to its settings or properties, I'll see that's not it. It's not where I thought it would be. 1 sec, sorry. Properties. Never mind. I'm lazy and I don't remember where it's located in Active Directory. I learned all of this in the last week, so forgive me if I'm not an expert. Essentially, this user 1 is set up to be tied with a HTTP service, which means that in this world, I created a web server and all the web server services are tied to this account. So anyone that wants to access the web server is going to go through this user 1 account. and that's our SPN, which is essentially a special type of account that is used to be tied with specific services such as file transfer, HTTP, an SQL server, things like that. And that is going to tie into our Kerberoast example. Where'd it go? There it go. Because when you need to authenticate and log into these accounts, it's going to be authenticated using Kerberoast. Or say I'm Alice and I want to access the web server as Alice, then it's going to also authenticate using Kerberoast. So what is Kerberoast? I've been kind of dancing around it for a while. Kerberoast is essentially the main method used by Windows to authenticate user accounts inside of the domain. It acts as a special third party for the authentication. So instead of me saying, hey, I'm Alice, I need to talk to Bob, I'm going to talk to Bob directly, and we're going to have to figure out how to get these keys and how to verify that he's Bob, I'm Alice. That's very hard because maybe you can have keys stored for Bob if there's only Alice and Bob on the network, but let's say there's 500 accounts on the network, and you all need to be able to verify that these 500 accounts are who they are, say they are, when they talk to the other 500 accounts. So what, that's 500 to the 500th keys that you have to store and figure out? That's impossible. So Kerberoast is making that simpler by being a third party that keeps track of all the different accounts in the domain, and whenever you need to access one of the other accounts or one of the other computers, you can go to this central Kerberoast and say, hey, I'm Alice, I need to talk to Bob, give me something so that I can talk to Bob. And you can trust that Kerberoast is going to give you a valid key so that you can verify who Bob is when you talk to them. And the reason why you want to be able to verify who you're talking to is there's a lot of different attacks where you can say, hey, I'm Bob, but not really be Bob, and glean information that you shouldn't have access to. So let's get a little bit deeper into the domain into how Kerberoast works. If you look at the beautiful picture I stole from the internet, you'll see the basic network protocol that Kerberoast uses. Step one, I'm a computer. Oops. I'm a computer, and I want to get access to this resource. Think of it as an HTTP or a web server that I want to get access to. So I'm going to go to our key domain center, essentially our trusted third party that has Kerberoast, and I'm going to request something called a TGT, which is a ticket granting ticket. Essentially, the ticket granting ticket says, hey, I am Alice. I can verify that I'm Alice. This is going to be how I request, how I verify to you that I'm Alice later when I want to talk to other people. And this is, I want the permission to talk to other people. So it goes to the window domain controller, and the window domain controller says, okay, you're right, you're Alice. Step two, I'm going to give you your ticket and a session. So in the next day, you can ask for any resource that you have permission to access, and I will grant it to you if you present this ticket. So then, step three, it's going to go back to the server and say, all right, I can now request resources. I want to request this specific resource using my verification that I'm Alice. Please let me talk to the web server, HTTP server. Windows domain controller says, all right, you've proven that you're Alice with the ticket that I gave you earlier. Now I'm going to give you a specific key that lets you talk to Alice, and Alice will know that it's you with this specific key. That's step four. Step five, all right, I have everything I need. Now I can talk to Alice. Alice is going to talk to me. We're going to do whatever we need, and you've verified that you are who you say you are, and the other server is who they say they are. That's the essential basics of how Kerberoast works at a high level. There's a lot more like nitty-gritty details on that you can read online if you want to. Does that make sense? Are there questions? Did I lose anyone? Because this is kind of essential to moving on. Go for it. Sure. So I'll draw it real quick. We have two servers. This is server one, Alice. Alice wants to talk to web. This is another server that Alice wants to talk to. But before that they can talk to web, Web needs to know who Alice is, and Alice needs to know who Web is. They can't just assume that they are who they say they are. There needs to be something to prove that. In order to prove that, Alice is going to go to our KDC, which is our Key Distribution Center, and say, hey, I'm Alice. And then the Key Distribution Center is going to be like, all right, you've proven that you're Alice. Here's a ticket. Anytime you want to talk to anybody, just give this back to me, and then I'll let you talk to them. So Alice is like, all right, I want to talk to Web. Here's my ticket. Can I talk to them? And then KDC's like, all right, you gave me your ticket. Here's a new key or a new ticket that you can use to talk to Web. And then Alice has permission to talk to Web, so using that key, Alice sends it to Web. Web is like, okay, that's the key I was looking for. Now you can talk to me. And then it talks back to Alice. That's essentially how Kerberoast works. Does that make sense? Go for it.
How does the Key Distribution Center verify Alice?
I have no idea.
Oh.
I did not look that up because I did not have time.
Okay.
I think it's they have each other's public and private keys. Like the KDC, I'm pretty sure, stores every key that's on the domain and then is able to verify that when it's presented by Alice, who will always have their private key. Yep. Okay. I think there's more to that. It's some form of public or not symmetric, asymmetric encryption. So high level, there's way more interesting stuff. That's how Kerberoast works. Does anybody see an issue with this potentially? I don't think I explained any issues or made it obvious, so don't feel bad. Go for it.
This is an educated guess. If you take over the resource server or somehow intercept it, then you can give out fake authentications.
Talking about the domain controller taking over that, or the resource server?
The resource server.
Probably not. I don't think so, because the resource server doesn't have any way to authenticate. It's just like it knows who it is and it knows what keys it's looking for, but only the KDC is providing like the ability to authenticate. So I'll go into it and what the actual issue is. So looking at this graph again, let's say I'm a hacker and I phished Alice, and now I have access to Alice's computer. I know her password, and I can log on to her terminal or to her computer and do whatever I want as if I were Alice. Well, all I have to do then is I can go to the KDC and say, hey, I'm Alice, not really, but you think I'm Alice. I want to talk to this server, this web server. Give me a key. Okay. How useful is that if all you do is get access to the web server and the web server doesn't really let you do anything hackery? No big deal. That's fine. They just have access to a web server now, but they can't actually change anything on it. However, when this key in step 4 gets sent back to Alice, it contains a hash, and inside of that hash, very funnily, contains the password to the account that's associated with the website. That's our SPN. So when I'm Alice and I say, hey, I want to get this key from the KDC, I want to be able to access the web server, can you give me the key? And the key is given to them. Like, cool. I'm not going to actually talk to the web server. I'm going to take this hash you gave me, extract the password from it, and then use those credentials to log in as if I were this web server account or this web server SPN. And the domain has no idea because it just assumes that it's giving out a normal key to be able to access the features in the web server. And where this is really bad is if this web server account has higher abilities than Alice's account. Say it's an admin account. As a user, all I need to do is ask for an access to the web. It'll give me the key. I take the password out of it, and now I can log in as an admin as if I were a web account. Which we're going to demonstrate today if that didn't make sense. But that's the basic idea behind Kerberoasting is I have access to a user level account. I can ask for access to a admin level account that is running some sort of SPN service, and then I can break this password or break this hash to get a password and log in as if I were an admin account now. And that escalates your privileges, lets you do pretty much anything you want to do inside the network domain. So let's show that in action with a demo. The basics of what you need to know is I'm running 3 virtual machines on my laptop right now. One is a Kali machine box. If you're not familiar with Kali, or if you didn't attend last week, it's essentially a Linux operating system that has a bunch of hacker tools logged on. This Kali box specifically is not a part of the domain. It is not seen as an active computer by the domain controller in the Windows system that I set up. The other 2 VMs I have set up, oh, one more note on the Kali box is it has direct access to Alice Smith's device and can send whatever it wants as if it was Alice Smith. So the next device inside the domain is, it's called HackMe. That's the name of the domain. Think of it as like a DNS server name, or like www.google.com. Hack.me is our domain. There's 2 virtual machines running on it. The first one is the domain controller, and inside the domain controller it has all the stuff to run the domain, as well as an HTTP server with associated SPN accounts, and it's at this IP. The other device is a standard device, or a standard computer that a worker would have, that has Alice Smith as the account. I know the password of Alice Smith, and it's at this IP address. Pretty simple domain setup, 3 computers. So the tools that we're going to use today are Impacket, get users SPN. What it does is it finds all the SPN accounts that are on the domain that are tied to user accounts. And then it performs that request of, hey, I'm Alice, give me this person's key, please. And then it will spit out that hash for you to crack. And then once we get that hash, we're going to use hashcrack to break it and get a password and log in as if we were the web account. So let's begin. All right, so I'm going to open my Kali box. That's not Kali, this is Kali. All right, open my Kali box. If it would let me, there we go. It's being slow. While Kali is fixing itself, any questions so far? Are we doing good? People understand the basic outline of what I'm about to do? No? You don't understand? Oh, all right. I saw you shaking your head there. A little worried. Okay. So, Kali, we're going to use the first tool, which is Impacket, which is a bunch of tools. And then the specific tool is get user SPNs. So if I just run this, it's going to tell me how it works. We can look over it go for it. Yep, thank you. Control plus. Nope, that's not working. Control shift plus, thank you. All right, that big enough for everyone? Cool. So we're going to look at the output, and essentially what it's looking for is a target. We call the script, and then it asks for the domain, which is hack.me, a username. We have Alice Smith. We already cracked her computer. And then Alice Smith's password, which is password123. Very secure, I know. I wonder how we hacked her. So let's try that out, see what happens. Get user SPNs, hack me, Alice Smith, password123. And what this does is it goes through the domain and it looks for every single SPN account that is associated with the user. And let me make a distinction that I didn't make before. When you create an SPN or a server or a service principal name, they don't always have to be associated with the user account on the domain. They can just be associated with the computer. And the reason why it's only looking for ones associated with user accounts is because oftentimes the passwords are way easier to crack. The way that passwords are set up for computer accounts is different, and it's more automated and very hard to crack, so not worth your time. But we got all the user associated accounts, and we see that there's one account that exists in this domain called http server.hack.me on port 80. And the user of that account is user1. It has domain admin. Whoa, that means we can get admin access if we crack this password. It's also a user. It's in hack and me. Its password was set, what was that, yesterday? Today. I guess I was up at midnight doing this. Its password was set at midnight when I was doing resetting its password, and it logged in some time ago, I think midnight again when I was resetting its password. So now we have all the information. We're gonna add one more part to the same Python script that I'm running, requests. And what this does is it takes all of the SPNs that it just listed, so say there's 3 or 4, and it's going to make that request where it's like, hey, here's Alice's credentials. I want access to these SPNs. Give me a hash, please. And it's going to spit that out into terminal. So let's run that. It did not run. Why didn't it work? That's weird. This has never happened to me. I swear.
You've been pwned.
Okay. That's fine because I made a backup. I'm going to show you what it would have looked like had it worked for some reason. Where did I put it? Not there. That'll work. Okay, so what it would have spit out would have looked like this, which is a really big hash. Has anyone seen like a password hash before? Looked at password.txt on your Linux machine? It's something like this. Who's familiar with what a hash is? Okay, so about half of you. If you're not familiar with what a hash is essentially a one-sided function where you put something in and it'll spit something different out. The nice part about that is every time you put in the same thing, it'll always spit out another thing that is always going to be the same. So it's a or a many to one relationship. And the reason why, go ahead.
How would you decode this hash?
I'll show you in a sec. Okay, but the reason why this is very useful is when you store passwords, you don't store them in plain text. Instead, you store them with a hash. And then when someone enters their password, says, hey, I want to log in, here's my password. It hashes that password, compares it to the hash they have stored. And if they're the same, it means they inserted the right password. The reason why this is very good is typically it's very hard to take a hash and turn it back into the original password. However, if it's weak or if you have a password dictionary that contains that password, it makes it very easy to just compare and find the password, which is what we're going to do with Hashcat. There are multiple different ways of decrypting a hash to find a password. John the Ripper is pretty popular. Hashcat's another really popular one. There's probably like 5 others that I don't know off the top of my head. We're going to use Hashcat because that's what I use right now. But it's up to you. And then we're going to use a word list in conjunction with it called rocku.txt. Rocku is a list of like 80, 90, 100,000 passwords that was leaked back in 2009. And it just shows you a ton of passwords that you can use as a way to compare, or as a way to see if these passwords are still being used and if you can crack them using that. It speeds up the cracking process. So all we do is we go into our PowerShell instance. That's not it. This one. Okay. And I'm telling you now that it's not going to work correctly because Hashcat already did this. Actually, can I just delete the pot file? Yeah. Remove hashcat dot pot file. All right, yeah, that'll work. So, and then we'll run hashcat.exe. You can also do this on Linux if you want. I'm doing it on Windows because I didn't want to install it on my Kali machine. I don't know. I'm doing it on Windows. Have fun. And it's going to take in the text file that contains the hash that is behind it currently. And then it's going to take a password list, which again is rocku.txt, which contains a ton of passwords. And then we're going to press enter, and we're going to wait for it to work. And this might take a while. It'll probably take like 2 minutes since I chose a password from Rocku when I was setting this account. But the reason why having a strong password is important is because when you don't, it makes it really easy to crack these passwords and gain access to things you shouldn't. Had this user account that we got the hash for had a strong password, then we wouldn't have been able to escalate privileges and we would not have been able to hack them. So if you look at the results, we cracked it, 1 out of 1 digests. And if we look at the password, where was it? Oh, here it is, the sexy one too. They were promiscuous. This is a password in RockU. It was the funniest one I could find. That was mostly appropriate. So now we have a password. That's sick. Let's do stuff with it. I'm gonna go to the computer that I already have access to. Dang, I'm going quicker than I expected. Y'all better have questions because I'm almost done. All right, we're gonna go to the computer that I already have access to. If I remember which one it is, I think it's this one. Cool. I have access to this. Instead of logging into Alice Smith, we're gonna do user 1, and then we're gonna type in the password, the sexy 12. I think that's it. Nope. I think that's it. And we logged in. We now have admin access to this domain. We can do anything we want on this network. And from there on, a hacker pretty much owns you, controls you, has complete power to do whatever they want. So the basics, rehashing it. If you're a hacker, you phish someone, you get access to their user domain. All you have to do is run one command that says get user SPN, and then steal all those hashes, send it to your supercomputer password cracker, and then potentially within a couple of hours to a couple of days, you'll have access to an account that you should not have access to that potentially has admin privileges, escalating your ability to do whatever you want inside of this network, to be a bad hacker that does bad things, or if you're just a pen tester, you know, write a report on it, show them your finding, and then say, fix your passwords, please. Any questions?
So when you get the SPN from the KBC, it has every password for the web login?
So,
It contains like every password? I don't understand how it has just every admin password if Alice, does Alice already have admin perms to the web?
no. So there's a couple of different accounts. So if I go to, this mouse sucks, I stole it from a lab. Okay, I go to our admin domain again. Let me show you the users that we have. All right, so we have Alice Smith, and Alice Smith is a regular user, not a domain admin. We hacked Alice using like a phish or something beforehand, or maybe I am Alice Smith and I'm a disgruntled coworker that wants to cause chaos. So with my regular Alice Smith stuff, I can request access to any SPN, and this is why SPNs matter, is they're not regular accounts. They're accounts that are associated with a service, so like a web service or a file transfer service or an SQL service. These accounts have extra privileges where if users want to access the file transfer server, they need to talk to Kerberoast to get permission to talk to that file transfer server. And when they get that permission from the KDC, the inside of the key that gets sent, which they forward to the resource they want to access, contains a key of the resource they want to access, and the password of the account that's associated with the resource they want to access. So Alice technically never gets or is able to see the password or is able to access the password, because that hash that Alice receives is never encrypted or decrypted until it gets sent to the resource that they're trying to access, and that resource is like, okay, I can decrypt it, that's my password, cool. I can verify that this key that was created by the KDC is correct, and they now have access to this server, or access to the features available on this server. I don't know if that helped explain it.
Yeah.
Cool, go for it.
Password that Alice receives is hashed. Is that the password to web server?
So what we received is this.
Right.
This is what Alice is going to send, or part of what Alice sends to the user one web server to verify that Alice has access to the user web server. However, if we don't do that, we can keep this, and inside of this, pretty much starting from this $, this is a hash that contains the password. Yes.
Is there a way to prevent attacks like this? Like, what would be the prevention?
There's a couple of preventions, but they're not great. The two main preventions. First one is whenever you create a service account, if possible, don't tie it to a user. You can just tie it to like a computer instead of a user that has access to multiple computers on the server. If you have to tie it to a user, then make sure that user has a strong password. Clearly, the sexy12 is not a good password, especially if it's in rocky.txt. So using strong passwords. The other main protection, and this has come within like web, it's still not enabled by default, but it's getting more common for admins to enable this, is the type of encryption that is being used to create this hash is like RC4 HMAC something, and it's very weak. It's actually the reason why the password is in there. If you can, you should, and the reason why it's still the default is most legacy servers still use that. However, if you can, you should use their like new feature, which is AES 128 type of encryption. I don't know exactly the reason why. It makes this attack less possible, if not impossible, but it is a better form of encryption that is like provably way more resistant to attacks. It's just not the default when you set up your domain. So you can still get this type of hash. Any more questions? All right, I got one more slide. There it is. So pretty much, if you want to do this yourself, you're going to have to learn how to set up the domain, which is actually really easy and kind of fun. This is the walkthrough that I followed mostly. It'll show you how to set up a domain using PowerScript. It'll also give you like ISOs so you can install these virtual machines yourself. It'll show you how to install the virtual machines for the most part. They're kind of outdated because VirtualBox changed their UI, but you can figure it out. And then it'll show you how to do a Kerberoast attack using a different tool. I used Impacket. They use some other tool that I can't remember what it's called. But pretty simple follow through that you can do over a week or maybe less if you're smarter than me. There's also a really good YouTube series online. John Hammond has created a playlist that is all about hacking Active Directory. So he'll help you figure out how to set up an Active Directory or a domain, and then he'll show you more than just Kerberoast attacks. There's like 20 different attacks on Active Directory that he walks through, gives you some tools, explains why it works. If you're interested in becoming a pen tester, being able to learn how Active Directory works and how to hack it is very important. That's almost always in scope for pen testing, and it's also one of the easiest ways to escalate your privileges to an admin if you get access to a user account. I'll post these on our Discord right after this so that you can have access yourself, and if anyone is interested in learning more, feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. If there are no more questions, that concludes it. Thank you for coming. Grab some pizza.